There's a lot that can be said about the concentration camps and the Holocaust during World War II. I'm going to try to stick solely to what Elie Wiesel tells us in this excerpt from Night. One of the most striking things I think he says when he's talking about writing his memoirs or his literary nonfiction pieces, he talks about how there weren't words for his experiences, that what happened to him and to his people, there weren't enough words to describe how horrible it was. How do you explain how the word chimney takes on a complete new meaning? How do you explain the word fire or train when it takes on a hugely different connotative meaning? And I think that for me is one of the most powerful parts about reading Night, is yes, he tells you this story, which is absolutely horrific and terrifying, but the words aren't enough. And it's important to remember that while reading these excerpts and while reading about things like the Holocaust, that a lot of the words that these folks are using for them are not sufficient to explain their experiences. So our excerpt starts off with their arrival at Birkenau. Birkenau was the receiving center for Auschwitz. This is where they would do the sorting and decide who they're going to exterminate instantly versus who's going to go to the Auschwitz work camp. And so this is a much more cleaned up, modern image. Looks a lot less terrifying and ominous like this. But this is the reality of what they were facing as they would roll up on these trains and be removed from the train. Here we have an image of unloading of hundreds, probably thousands of people from these cattle cars. You can see many of them are carrying bags. They really thought that they were being resettled, that they were being taken from the ghettos and being resettled. A large group of them, and this is noted in the excerpt that we read, had no concept of what Auschwitz was. They hadn't heard of it. And they're shocked that these things could be happening, that such horrible atrocities are being committed, and humanity doesn't know. So again, we have these unloading of families, children. Notice they're wearing the Star of David, which was required for them before they were taken to these camps. But you have all manner of families and children and tiny, tiny babies. I think this image here is particularly powerful. We're talking about the sorting out of who's going where. And Elie Wiesel notes, they told his father, go left. And so he wanted to be with his father. And he said, if they told him to go right, I was going to go right. But I went with my father. They told us to go left. And at that point, they did not know if left meant death or not. And what a powerful, powerful thing for someone who's 14 years old to cope with. The fact that this may be the moment of my death. Like I said before, I like this image because it is so powerful, because we see these children. And we know from history that it's highly unlikely that any of these children survived. And what a powerful, powerful thing to look back at history and to be able to understand these concepts. I have this picture of the glasses because they talk about they left their items behind along with their illusions. This illusion that we're being resettled. And when they pull up to these camps and see what's actually happening, those illusions are shattered. There is no more lying to yourself. There is no more hoping that you actually are being resettled. That living on the cattle car for however long and starving and dying of starvation and dehydration on these cattle cars was just something they had to suffer through to get to their resettlement camps. So the Nazis actually gathered up the belongings of the Jews and just all of the glasses. I think is a very powerful symbol for how many people actually were exterminated. This is a picture of a crematorium. You can see there are several functioning ovens, and this is where a lot of the corpses were placed if they weren't outright burned in pits, as is described in Wiesel's memoir. Arbeit macht frei is German for work makes you free. He makes a comparison at one point where he talks about why Auschwitz is better than Birkenau. And they see this, and it gives them a little bit of hope. Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. So there is this hope And again, probably an illusion of the concept that working will free us. If we can just continue to work, eventually we will be freed. We just have to get through the work. And really, much of their work was very difficult manual labor, which is probably why it's a good thing Faisal told Mengele he was a farmer and not an intellectual, because an intellectual wouldn't have a lot of strength and wouldn't be able to do the work that was necessary. Here we have an image of some of the younger folks in their striped prison clothes. Remember, these folks weren't generally issued jackets for winter and that sort of thing. They didn't tend to have good shoes for winter, and they just had to cope. Again, Faisal notes that they said the prayer of the dead for themselves because they knew that they probably weren't going to make it out. Here we have some of the bunks. These are the bunks he's talking about in the excerpt where they would sleep at night and you would hear them praying. And this is where he really argues with himself about the existence of God and how God, or his God, could allow such a horrible thing to happen to his people. Again, just another very eerie image of what it would have been like to be there during the time period. Barbed wire, electric fences, probably dogs barking, soldiers with their machine guns and that sort of thing. And then again, I have a picture of the shoes that were taken from these corpses and from the suitcases that people brought with them. You can see there's ragtag blankets being found and used to stay warm. But that's the reality of the background that we're talking about. We're talking about being at Auschwitz and suffering and trying to decide if there is a God and what does that mean and how can humanity do these things to each other.